So, as far as how many tags are allotted this year, are we where we're at last year? Are we more?
Had a kind of a precautionary effort, and we bumped up on bulls a little bit because the second piece of that is we've been seeing a higher bull to cow ratio or an increasing bull to cow ratio over the past 3-4 years, and so we're trying to balance that back out.
Why would it be bad to have more bulls?
It's not bad per se, it's not necessary.
Okay.
So at some point, if you look at really heavily hunted populations, think Oregon, Washington, they'll have as few as 10 bulls per 100 cow. And there is research that says when you get below that, you can actually have breeding problems because there's just not enough bulls to be with all the cows. The flip side of that is traditionally like national parks where there is no hunting, it can be as high as 50 per 100. And we are generally right around 30, 40. Again, in the past few years, it's been increasing to the point where it's about 55 now. So we can afford to take more bulls. We should create that opportunity for the Pennsylvania sportsman.
Okay. So world-class bulls here, right?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Their new non-typical record was shot last year. What is it about Pennsylvania's herd that makes it such a big draw? Like, such a big deal to be able to hunt elk in Pennsylvania.
And you're just talking hunting, not necessarily the viewing component.
Let's start hunting first.
All right. I think partly it is simply the fact that Pennsylvania sells. I mean, we have such a strong hunting heritage here. Brian said it earlier, but we are number 2 only to Texas in the number of hunting licenses sold. So we've got a really, really strong hunting ethic in the state. And that creates a lot of hunters, that creates a lot of interest. Second, the flip side of that is also that we do have world-class elk. I mean, we've got enormous bull elk. We've been traditionally very conservative on bull tags, and that keeps the age class high, which keeps the antler structure mature, and those are probably the two main drivers behind that.
All right, now let's switch to the viewing side.
Okay.
Why? Because I want to be all-inclusive here,
yeah,
right?
no, absolutely.
So,
yeah. It's important to mention that.
This event, there are a lot of hunters that come up here, right? But there's a lot of families, there's a lot of non-hunters that come up here. Why is the elk country so good for viewing elk as well? Because you have to drive a long distance to find elk anywhere else.
That's part of it, right? So I would say that we've got large urban areas. We've got Pittsburgh, we got Philly, we got Buffalo, Erie. Within 2 hours, maybe not Philly, but those other areas, they're certainly within 2, maybe 2.5 hours drive. So there's a lot of population within a short distance. And secondly, it's just amazing. It is absolutely amazing, particularly during the fall or during the rut, to see these animals in their natural habitat, screaming their heads off, doing what what evolution drove them to do, with the backdrop of the fall colors. It just does not get much better than that. So those two things probably are what have really created an elk culture in this area.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that it seems like the community, as a lot of these communities around here, are embracing the
Agreed.
elk, right?
Yes. In the past 20 years,
elk is in
especially.
their name.
Yep.
They're doing, they're selling elk burgers, which don't come from the elk that are hunted. Make sure that everyone knows that, right? Like, you can't sell wild game meat. Those are farmed elk, but they're embracing that whole elk culture that is being built around here, which wasn't always the case.
Correct.
And still isn't always the case.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's going to have their own opinion. I do think, I would agree with you that particularly in the last, I'll say, 15, 20 years, and really the last 5 years, it's really accelerated, but there's just been a tremendous amount of support, and elk is cool, it's sexy, it's neat, it's, they're really, really interested in it now, and local people have capitalized on that.
I mean, we went so long in this region without a lot of elk, and now all of a sudden we have these elk. So it makes sense that it would take a little bit for farmers, for landowners.
They have a very different opinion.
Yes, to be like, some of them can be around, right? But now, seeing that community involvement is great. Might as well capitalize on it, right? If you got the people coming, you need the infrastructure to make it nice for the people to be here.
People won't come.
Yeah, or else people won't come. As the wind's picking up a little bit now.
Is that a tornado?
No, jeez. So, Jeremy, what do we need to know about elk? What do the people need to know? Last year we went through the whole biology of elk, the history of PA. elk, but today, right? What do we need to know about elk? What has changed? What has stayed the same that's consistent that we've had reaffirmed?
I mean, we could go a lot of different directions with that question. It's a very
Go whatever direction you want.
So let me just start off with how many we have. That's always one of the frequent things that we get. We do an aerial survey every year. It relies on radio collared animals. But essentially, this past year, we had an estimate of 1,278. There's not exactly 1,278 elk in Pennsylvania. It comes with confidence intervals, but, the best answer I can give is that we're somewhere between 1,300, 1,400 animals that are out there.
Why don't you just set up a checkpoint that each elk has to walk through and say, count me, right?
Yeah. The Census Bureau.
Yeah, I want to give a quick plug because I was up here in Benezette along with you for the Wild About Elk educational workshop.
Yeah, teachers, continuing
for
education
teachers, yeah, or state park educational people. And you gave a presentation on how you do the survey, right? And we got to see the map with all the lines, right, that the airplane flew, and using thermal imaging and everything. Like, it was really cool to see how that is done.
Yep.
And there's a lot of work that goes into it. You said 90 hours.
I mean, it's a lot of flying. It's a lot of, yes, it is a lot of work. One of the benefits of that is that small airplane crashes used to be, and probably still are, the number one killer of biologists, right? So when we used to do aerial survey, you have to fly low and slow. You're near stall speed, something goes wrong, and the pilot just doesn't have time to recover and get the plane back up, and everybody goes down and dies. Because of the thermal camera that you talked about, and I should have said that, we do use a thermal camera that hangs from the belly of the plane. Because of that, they can fly a lot higher, so they're about 2,500 feet. They can fly a lot faster, and all of the magic is really done by the camera operator. Mm-hmm. She's in communication with the pilot, obviously, but it just allows them to fly higher, faster, safer, all around. And so we're using technology to the best of our ability, and we'll continue to do that, into the future to continually improve our population.
Yeah. And it's a big area, so it would seem a little needle in the haystack, but as you mentioned, the GPS callers sort of help focus in on some areas that, okay, if there's one there's a good chance this time of year
spies,
there's going to be a bunch.
Right? They're the ones that are out there letting us...
They're turncoats.
Yeah, against their will, but yes. Our GPS collars stay on for about 3 years. They are programmed to fall off automatically, and there's like a separate battery for a drop-off device that's built into them that has a longer battery life than the battery of the collar, if that makes sense. So they're programmed in such a way that they will fall off before the battery dies and we lose communication with it altogether.
So what else do we need to know? So is that, you mentioned that population estimate, is that higher, lower, about the same?
It's been slowly increasing. It's probably steady compared to last year, but over the past, if we look at the past 5 years, it's been a steady, slow increase.
Right, so are elk, putting air quotes here, right, that everyone can see, are they escaping the elk range? And I got to worry about them walking through Point State Park, or are they still pretty contained?
They are slowly, very slowly expanding in their distribution. They are still within the elk management area, which is basically 2G, right? There is a little difference between the very eastern boundary of 2G and the elk management area, but it's subtle. For simplicity reasons, let's just say the elk management area is 2G. Within that area, we're only about 2/3 occupied, right? So the western half is occupied. There's tons of room to expand to the north and east. Lots of state forests, lots of state parks. We're trying to keep the animals on public land so that they stay out of trouble. You mentioned farmers earlier. They can definitely be, they can get into conflicts with agriculture, okay? It's one thing to have 5 little floppy-eared whitetails in your cornfield, something totally different to have 5 elk in your cornfield.
Well, and then also that expanding that way would be less populous, so less chances of car impacts as well.
I mean, road density is lower on public land than it is on private property. So,
Okay. What else do we need to know before you got to go? You got to go here in a little bit.
I got a few minutes.
Okay. All right.
All right. I talked about calf survival earlier and how that changed. We just finished up a calf survival project. So 2020 through 2022, those 3 years, we captured 50 cows per year, so 150 total, and we used VITs. I will not describe that here, but basically it gives us the ability to know when the animal calves. We'd actually literally get a text message on our phone that said, hey, this cow just dropped her calf. We'd run out there, find the calf, put a radio collar on the calf, and once the radio collar is on the animal, we can monitor it and tell whether it's alive or dead, which gives us survival, right? And when I say calf survival, I'm really only talking a year. So from birth to 1 year of age, at that point they're no longer a calf; they're now a yearling. So we're just focused on that first year of life. 3 years, 2020, 2021, 2022, we captured 134 calves, and we ended up with about 63% survival.
Is that a good number?
It's lower than before. So in the past, there was a calf study done prior to me being here in 2006 to 2009, and they had 82% survival. And that, again, is where that disparity comes from, where we backed off a little bit on the cow tags as a precautionary measure. Most of the predation in our study was, I shouldn't say most, a portion of it was due to predation, right? That's natural. So some black bear, some coyote. We did have a few animals hit by vehicles. We had a few animals taken legally during the hunt. We had a couple die from disease and things like that. So overall, it's not a bad number. It's just lower than what we had previously expected. The only other difference that I'll point out is that the previous studies that were done on calf survival, early 2000s, things like that, were they didn't use VITs, so they may have missed the first few days of life. And because of newer technology, we were able to pretty much get it from birth all the way through to a year.
So that by missing those earlier days, they might have had a higher success rate, possibly.
I got to be careful. Some of the authors of that original study might be listening, and they'd be highly offended if I said that. But yes, you could arguably say that they may have missed some of the most vulnerable periods in a calf's life.
That's sort of the way science works, right? As technology gets better, the science is going to get a little better. So that can sort of happen, right?
Yes.
That we can figure that out. How's he doing? You're his boss. How's he doing?
Doing great.
Okay.
He's my super boss.
So, okay.
There's a few chain links.
So, when it comes to the predation, you said bears, coyotes.
I should say canine. Technically, we said bears was a portion of it, and then canine was another one. It was difficult to make a distinction between coyote and feral dog. I will say that the likelihood of feral dogs being out there is slim. So most of that is probably due to coyote.
Okay.
But it's possible that there might be a few feral dogs out there that took some animals.
Do you have you studied? Do you know? Is there like a step down in predation from bears and coyotes as the calf gets bigger and then becomes a yearling? Like, does that, or are they still being preyed upon as adults? Like a pack of coyotes are coming and
it's
getting
really just the calf cohort that's going to be taken by coyotes and black bears. The main predator of adults is
humans.
People, yes,
right.
So either directly through hunting or indirectly through cars and things like that.
Okay, yeah, because Pennsylvania we don't have those predators that are typically associated with adult
wolves, cougar. Those are the animals.
No mountain lions.
That would be.
Had to bring that in.
No mountain lions.
I knew it was coming.
I won't tell you my background either.
That is a funny story. I used to research mountain lions.
My master's was on mountain lions.
So that's why you're here. Why you're
let's
here.
Let's not go down that road.
Now we know the truth comes out.
All
right. So, Jeremy, the excitement, right, for today is
palpable.
Yeah, you got three people here in the booth that don't work for the Game Commission that all have a vested interest in elk hunting, right? Excitement for hopefully getting a tag pull, but to be fair, it's going to be a pretty low number, right, of actual people. That being said, it's actually a pretty, let's say, you still have a pretty good chance. Like, I still have a pretty good chance in comparison to Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, a place like that, right?
Define chance. Like, you're saying that
the probability is a little bit better here than other states. Or am I wrong?
I don't know that. So, and when you say Colorado, you can buy an over-the-counter tag in Colorado. You're talking about some of the special draw zones.
Yeah.
I honestly,
for to be able to get a bull of similar caliber here.
You don't typically. Gotta be careful saying this. There are fewer large antlered bulls per area in the western United States than there are in the state of Pennsylvania.
Now his email address is
The odds are not good. Okay, I mean, I can't spin
Yeah, I
that
mean-
in any positive, like super positive way. The placation I can offer is it's $12.
Right.
Okay, so like the odds are not good of you drawing a tag in Pennsylvania, but it's $12 to put in, and you can't win if you're not in.
And it's better odds than the Mega Millions.
Yes. Okay, so we
Right?
know that. Yeah, like
Yeah,
I
I
always
mean-
get the complaint that you got better odds of being struck by lightning. That is not true. I did look that up one time, and that's like 1 in 7 million or something like that. And then the Mega Millions is like 1 in insane number. So
Yeah.
yes, you do have a better odds of pulling a Pennsylvania elk tag than you do of getting struck by lightning or winning the Mega Millions.
And to make it feel palatable, right, for the people like myself that haven't been drawn for years now, right? The money's going to a good cause. I'll let Brian answer that question.
yeah. I mean, we go right back into our elk management program. That's it takes a lot to research and manage these elk and do all the habitat work that we have going on. Working with our partners at DCNR and Kika. So it's a major investment. Not only helps elk, it helps a lot of wildlife.
So what are we doing to help manage the elk outside of the hunt, right, and the research? What kind of like boots on the ground work is being done?
Habitat, I mean, would be the main.
What does that
thing.
mean?
So, yeah, that's a good question.
Because when you get elk specific, it's going to be different than what you would do for white-tailed deer. It's going to be different
I mean, yeah,
than what
it's
you're going to do
different.
for pheasants or turkey. I mean, there's going to be overlap.
There overlap,
right?
yes. There are
Yeah.
definitely overlaps. And
But-
things that we do in the name of elk, really do benefit a ton of different species. But the one limiting factor for eastern United States, Pennsylvania included, is herbaceous grassland type habitat, right? So in Pennsylvania, reclaimed strip mines, right, generally make pretty
Yep.
good elk habitat. Some of our game lands include those. The Game Lands 311, where we are today, includes a lot of reclaimed strip mines. But that's always a constant thing of trying to I got to be careful about saying like convert forested areas into grasslands, but take a forested area, thin it down some, and really turn it into more of an herbaceous understory where you have grasses and forbs on the understory, but you still may have some scattered trees, right? We like to refer to it more as a woodland savanna type environment versus a grassland, but still, you've got to have that herbaceous understory to support elk. They're more likely to graze than they are to browse. They will browse, particularly in winter, but if grass is available, typically that's what elk
We really don't want it. If they're browsing too much, that's actually a bad sign, right? Because that means the habitat can't support them. And you're saying you want to be careful about like converting. Listen, this isn't the 70s anymore. It's okay to cut down a tree. It's okay to cut down a bunch of trees. When we manage forests in a sustainable way and you're cutting them down, it actually benefits wildlife, including elk, deer, turkey,
grassland
grouse,
songbirds. Yep.
songbirds,
Yes, so many
right?
of our non-game
snakes,
species as well.
right? Like it's okay to cut down trees. Like it actually benefits more wildlife to cut down trees than to allow basically a savanna of nothingness, a desert
Right.
underneath.
We don't want
trees,
ferns,
right?
We don't want an understory of
As someone who has 70 acres, that the majority of that is ferns underneath, it is maddening how slow the tree regeneration is, right? So it's okay to cut down the trees.
In fact, forestry is our biggest habitat management technique that we have by far.
Can you talk about that for a second, because there's some misconceptions out there,
Yeah.
right? Over by Mundorf, a couple years ago, there was a timber stand improvement done, and there was a lot of lumber left on the floor.
Yeah.
Why? Why isn't it they cut down trees, they take them, and they pay the game commission?
Well, not specifically familiar with that situation, but there's
But,
going to be a lot of debris there. Number
Yeah.
one, you want to leave the debris there because it helps decrease the amount of deer depredation on seedlings as they come up through those canopies that are laying on the ground. That what we call dead woody debris on the ground is great for other wildlife species. Provides great cover, get good regeneration, and the key with forestry is, after a while, anybody who's been, especially North Country or anywhere where there's a forest, after it matures, you get a closed canopy, you no longer have that diversity of plants. Plants is what things like deer, need to eat. It's what elk need to eat. You look at the wild turkey. If you don't have any good nesting cover
Yep.
at that level, you're not going to have as successful nests. So that cover, that diversity and forest management is the biggest tool that we can apply. On our game lands, we have a very aggressive and large forestry program. That's where we do most of our habitat.
Yeah, and sometimes the work that the Game Commission wants done, right, forestry-wise, isn't going to be profitable to a company that's going to come
Sometimes
in,
we
right?
have to pay to have it taken out.
Right. So, or you could theoretically, right, say like, hey, we want you to cut this. We'll let you cut this other where
Right.
you can make money off of this. So
Exactly.
it's a trade-off,
Yes,
right? So just because you see trees cut down and timber not taken, that doesn't mean it's wasted, right? It was done in a management perspective way.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So I just want to get that out there to these people. Like, you look at that and you're like, man, why did they leave? Because you're trying to meet management goals.
Right. And there's a
not,
method to their madness.
Right. And not just we need to make much money as possible off of this. Although that is a nice.
We have to be
little
good
benefit.
stewards. You know, we
Yeah.
have resources out there that can bring back benefit to the wildlife. We got to be smart about it, but at the same time, our priority is always wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't, we do commercial forestry to help wildlife habitat.
Right. Because if it was nothing but doing it for the money, it would just be clear cuts, right, all over the place that aren't always the best management option
Well,
for that area.
It gets a little complicated because there's nothing wrong with clear cuts. There's an appropriate place for clear cuts. And when we look at, like, you have a timber stand improvement site, your TSI you talked about, or you want to get more shade in the ground to get more of what we call advanced oak regeneration or tree regeneration goal before you do that final harvest. At some point in time, you got to sit back to get that early succession habitat,
Right,
and then the forest grows again. That's why it's so important. We look at like deer depredation or deer browsing on that regenerating forest. That's your future forest is those young seedlings on the forest floor. If you don't have them, not going to come in by themselves. You got to
Right.
have them before you cut it. It gets real complicated. I mean, forestry is a real science.
Yeah, which is why on our property we leave it to professionals to tell us what to do, because it's like I don't know. Yeah, that sounds good. I can research, but I don't have time, right? Like, it's not my job. It's
No, that's why you hire a forester.
yeah, that's why I hire
It
foresters.
takes time, right? They're
Yeah.
planning 30, 40, 50
Yeah,
years.
beyond
Stuff
their
that they're
career.
never going to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the last time we had ours timbered, it was basically pulpwood, because we had to leave the good
Yep.
oaks and the good maples there, because if we cut those out, we'd never have them again.
Right.
And it was going to be just nothing but birch and white pine, and that wasn't going to meet our management goals. So it's like, okay, let's look into the future. I'm never going to see a timber harvest on my property my family property that makes me a bunch of money, right? That's not going to happen because we don't have the trees to be able to do that. But we can manage now so that it ends up giving us a little bit of money to do and accomplish management goals, to where my son will be able to get a good timber harvest off there. Unfortunately, trees don't grow fast, so
Takes time.
it takes a while. Jeremy, before you leave, to get to the drawing where, by the way, my name's going to get pulled, so don't worry about that. And that's
If it
not.
does, you better say something.
Everyone's going to know whenever I get that phone call.
Okay.
What do we need to know about elk? What do you want to leave people with about just elk in general and what's going on?
I think Pennsylvania has one of the most amazing wildlife programs out there, elk included. I'm a small piece of that, Put in for the drawing, right? If you're interested in hunting elk, put in for the drawing. Who cares if it has bad odds? It's $12. It's still a good investment, as you pointed out. If you're interested in just seeing elk and kind of the non-consumptive part of it, and enjoying elk culture, come up to Benezette. There's nothing wrong with that either. Like, this environment is really catered to that. And just enjoy the outdoors, I guess is what I'm trying to say, right? Whether you are a consumptive user, you're hunting, whether you're a non-consumptive user, you just want to be out there viewing elk or enjoying the outdoors. The Game Commission is a part of all of that, and we manage wildlife for all people, regardless of where their value set is. So just do it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Jeremy, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
We're going
for
to
having me.
switch over to Brian, because I know you're busy today.
I'm gonna go do a talk.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna zip over and do the drawing. So I will hopefully pull your name here soon.
Yeah, good. I can't wait.
Now we can talk about it.
Now we can talk bad about him and how he didn't go to Penn State.
Yep. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
I wasn't part of the interview.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
are.
Get these out of staters. Oh man. the best person for the job. He says.
But then he resigned.
All right, Brian. Let's talk. We've been talking a lot about elk stuff, but there's more than just elk here, right? There's more than just elk. I mean, this is Elk Expo. We have to talk about elk, but Pennsylvania offers way more than just elk. So let's talk about the Game Commission. What's been going on with the Game Commission?
It's been an exciting year. So we had, the biggest change we've seen is instead of going to red envelopes for antlerless licenses, now we're able to go online and purchase your hunting license and your antlerless tag if it was still available right off the bat. I love that I got my 2G and my hunting license in 3 minutes on my home computer. Worked like a charm. Now the first day went a little rough. In the morning we did have some issues with some coding errors that weren't discovered. It took about an hour and a half for the engineers to figure that out and fix the waiting room. Cleared out by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So very little wait time, and all except for those 2 peak.
On the first day.
No, none of them.
2G was the first one, and that took until Wednesday, right?
Exactly.
So for next year, right, everyone can just relax a little bit on that first day, right? Except for 2G, I understand that.
Yeah, but even I went on Tuesday morning, 3 minutes in, out, done. I
Right.
got my 2G tag.
And that was curiosity for me, and I have to say, now, granted, I'm a teacher. I don't work in the summer, right? So I could just sort of sit around all day. But it was nice. Like, I got on, queue, put my email address in, and then, now, granted, it was hours later, right? Because there was a big rush of people.
Yeah.
But I got the email, and within 20 minutes, I had my license, had my doe tag. We're good to go, right? So it really didn't have that bad. I didn't think it was that bad.
No, I went down in the afternoon because Bass Pro is a big retailer of licenses. I went down and I just started walking the line and talking to hunters, and asking them, what WMU are you applying for? And one said 5C, and I'm like, that never sells out there in the first round. He says, I know, I just wanted to come and check it out. And I heard that repetitively all through the line.
Yep.
It was just exciting. I just wanted to be here. The line at that, by the end, the system was operating as it should function, so the line wait wasn't long that first Monday. But they said, I just wanted to experience it, and
It's funny. It's funny to me because I listen to like the Meat Eater podcast, right? And Ryan Callahan is a vice president of the board for BHA, right? So BHA has been very much a proponent over the years of get rid of the pink envelope system. And Ryan has brought up the fact that PA, they have this system, and everyone else that sits down in that podcast is like, wait, what? What do they do? Like, what do you mean you can't just get it online? So it's like, in this state, while it seems like a huge change for us, the vast majority of hunters in the rest of the country are like, yeah, we've been doing that for 10 years.
Yeah, and the Game Commission, we've been selling licenses online for a long time. Now, this system was different in that there's an issue of the volume.
Right.
So you'll hear this word queue, which is the software. So one of the ways we prepared for this surge, we knew there would be a high peak volume. We expected delays. One of the ways we work with that is something called Queue It, which is a program. Think about a doctor's office. You walk in, you sit in a doctor's office, and the doctor can only handle so many people an hour. So as the doctor finishes one patient, somebody from the waiting room gets moved into it. So that's what it keeps the system from crashing. So this is the way all these systems operate with Queue It is, you may have 15, 17,000 people in the waiting room, but if the system can process 10 to 15,000 licenses an hour, 17,000 or whatever isn't a big number because it chews through those pretty quick. So again, the second round, we had the queue completely emptied out, which means you were just going in and getting your license by 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, I think I only had to wait on the second round because I think I logged on around 9 o'clock. I only waited, I don't know, I think it was 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's 10,
like I actually
minutes,
I almost wasn't ready. I was like, oh crap, I gotta get rolling.
And one thing we're finding is kind of interesting is it looks like I anticipate our sales will be higher this year because it's just so
I don't have to move this, or I should,
You
or
can move it wherever you want, buddy.
how far do I
We're
want
ready
it
to
from
go.
my?
Right there's fine. You're good. How you doing?
I'm all right.
Good. Good.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
It's been too long. We went for a while there, seeing each other a lot.
You know, it's funny because I remember still the first email. You know, you
Yeah.
emailed me and were like, "Hey, you know, more or less introducing yourself," and
that was during COVID times.
that's right.
And I came up on a day that I didn't have to work. And
That's right.
On a Friday in the middle of winter.
Yep, I remember it like it was yesterday.
So do I.
Well, that was probably 4 years ago.
You can still listen to that episode if you want. It's still out there. That's a couple years ago now. You know.
Yep.
So Ben, director of what?
Conservation
Conservation
Education Coordinator.
Coordinator. There's your fancy title.
Yeah, that's a
What does
long
that
one.
mean? What do you do?
A lot. I
You know,
guess
I want to interrupt you for a second. That's what I love about this organization. Everyone has a title, but it's always on hand, all hands on deck, whatever's needed, right?
that's the truth.
So okay, so now go. What do you do?
So I coordinate, which makes sense with my title. Pretty much 95% at least of the educational programs that we do. I also teach a lot of those programs. We do field trips here at the center for students of all ages. We do weekend programs every Saturday and Sunday here at the center year round, free of charge. And let's see what else. We do offsite programs. I call that educational outreach. And then we also do distance learning through Zoom year round. And then on top of that, we have an internship program that I more or less coordinate. And then we also have a scholarship program. So yeah, I could go on and on. It's a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, that's how we got started. Was I found out about the virtual field trips, right? That's offered, and I was
Right.
interested in it for my district, right? So I'm sort of like the liaison for my district, school district, of like, hey, this is an option to do that. I don't think anyone is actually taking advantage of it. I try to push it every year, and I came up to find out more about it. And hey, let's talk about it, because like that's an awesome thing that goes on. So, I mean, this virtual field trip and like the virtual Zoom stuff that you're doing, it's not just for kids.
That's right.
It's for anyone.
We have provided this distance learning program now for, I have to keep track. So every county in Pennsylvania, all 67 counties, we've also provided educational programs through distance learning for 13 other states. So we've had this program reach as far as California to the west and Florida to the south and a lot of states in between. And like you said, it's not just kids. We've provided this for public libraries, civic groups, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, even assisted living facilities. So, yeah, it's wonderful. You know, it's free of charge.
That was my next question. How much does all this cost?
So I have to give a shout out to the Eastern chapter of the Wild Sheep Foundation. They have supported our distance learning program so that it can be free of charge. They take care of shipping all of these boxes full of cool elk stuff.
That is the coolest part for me, because it's one thing to have the kids looking at the screen and you're talking, or your intern, or whoever it is, or whatever educator is talking about elk. But you're sending these trunks, right, of elk hides, of an elk antler,
Elk skulls, tracks, shoulder blades.
that the kids can touch and feel as you're talking about them.
Absolutely. And then I also send a binder with other lesson plans for whoever that educator may be. Maybe it's a school teacher, or maybe it's a Boy Scout leader, or maybe it's a 4-H leader. But there are other lesson plans that then they can add on. They can develop more education if they want about elk and the deer family using our materials that we send. And it's great for all ages. I mean, that's another thing that people don't realize. We teach pre-K to gray. So I'm talking, you know, I've done programs for 3-year-olds. I've done programs for 80-year-olds and beyond. You know, a lot of the field trips even here, it's tour buses. And a lot of those people are up in their years, but they love being here, you know, seeing elk and learning about the success story of the Pennsylvania elk herd.
Yeah, and it's not just virtual field trips. There's even professional development that happens up here. Just
Absolutely.
last year, I was up here for professional development. I was able to get some credit for being a teacher to come up here and learn not about elk, but how to teach kids about elk and
Right.
how to incorporate it in our own classrooms, in our own programs. Because there were people from the DCNR,
Right.
educators for DCNR and other agencies learning how to do this kind of
So that workshop that you're talking about, that educator workshop, like you said, it's for both formal and non-formal educators. We do that every year. Usually it's in spring because we incorporate the Pennsylvania Game Commission, and then we go on a calf capture, which you experienced. And this year we had 20 participants. We had some preschool teachers, we had some elementary teachers, we had some high school teachers, we had some 4-H leaders, we had some Pennsylvania State Park employee educators, and we had 3 college professors. So quite a wide spectrum.
and that's awesome.
It is, and everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's great. If you had to estimate, how many people do you think you've educated?
So
Or
I have
Ki-
to
that Kika has educated.
I have to keep track every year. I've been here as the education coordinator for 6 years, and it has grown every year pretty much. I was a school teacher, elementary, for 22 years prior to coming here. So to answer your question, this past year, 2023, we educated over 38,000 people. And last year was over 42,000 people. I would have to guess in the past 13 years, this place was built in 2010. I would have to estimate that we're probably over 300,000 people, maybe over 400,000 people.
That doesn't even count the people that come here just to try to look at elk and get educated by the stuff that's on the walls in the visitor center.
Not unless we engage them. We actually keep track of those people that we engage as
Right.
well.
So I'm saying, like, even the non-engaged people are still learning something because of the visitor center.
I hope so.
Right?
There's
So-
an awful lot to learn about in there, as you know.
Yeah. So, what kind of teaching opportunities or education opportunities are there here at Elk Expo?
Okay, so we have, actually I have a schedule here. Let me grab it.
Becomes officially prepared.
Okay, so some of these seminars and programs are taught by our staff. Others are taught by the Pennsylvania Game Commission. And then we have what I would like to call some local experts that we bring on board as well. We try to mix it up every year. Some of these programs, Jason, are repeat each year because people like them. Others, we keep each year because they focus on elk, which the majority of the people here have some type of interest in elk. And then each year we try to get some new ones as well. So this year we have, we already had Pennsylvania Game Commission Wildlife Veterinarian do a program this morning. Here coming up we have the hunt chef, Jeremy Critchfield. I've got to see his programs. I don't know if you have.
I did in Monroeville this spring. It is awesome.
He's excellent.
He's awesome.
He is. I actually met him 3 or 4 years ago at Chico Outdoors down in Latrobe, and I said, we got to get him here to the Elk Expo. And finally we did, and he's going to do a program today and tomorrow. So for those of you that are listening that don't know about the hunt chef, Jeremy Critchfield, he is a 5-star chef, and he's a hunter. So he brings it all together, and he is a great educator and what I would say performer. I mean, he breaks down a deer right in front of you, talks about the muscle groups, talks about how to cook them correctly, what to do with them. And, I've been a hunter all my life. I've butchered my own deer all my life, but I still learned a lot attending his program. So I'm glad he's here. He also has a great line of brines, seasons, and all that stuff as well that's great with wild game. I'm going to keep moving here. So we also have Jeremy Banfield. He is the elk biologist for the Pennsylvania Game Commission. He's doing a program today on the elk herd. Let's see, we have somebody doing a program on fly fishing. I forget his name. He's new this year. I'm excited to have him. He's set up over here. He has an incredible line of products, flies. So I'm glad he's here. We also have elk country nights are becoming a really big hit. So we developed our own trivia, and we're going to be doing that today. So free of charge, people that think they know a lot about elk, know a lot about elk country, Pennsylvania wildlife and conservation and history. That's what those questions are going to focus on. We have the elk calling contest presented by Fox Pro. I coordinate that. That's at 4 o'clock today. Of course, at 3 o'clock is the drawing of all the Pennsylvania Game Commission elk tags, which a lot of people are excited about that. We also have a mock archaeological dig for kids at 11 o'clock. We did that last year for the first time, and it was. We have Elk Smart by the Keystone Elk Country Alliance and the Pennsylvania Game Commission in partnership today. Another big one is Snakes of PA with Bill Wheeler. So he always brings in a big crowd. Very, very good speaker. Very educated about snakes, especially Pennsylvania snakes. And he actually has with him here a lot of PA snake species, live. So for people to check out. His presentations are always well attended, and we're happy to have him back. We also have today some live music, and that pretty much wraps up today's schedule. And then tomorrow we have a lot more. I don't know if you want me to talk to that or
we'll
not.
talk about that tomorrow,
Okay,
but
sounds
yeah,
good.
I mean, there's just so many educational opportunities here, right? Like that's just
There is.
That's as much as it's entertainment here, things to see, things to buy. The education aspect of it is just awesome.
Well, honestly, I mean, Keystone Elk Country Alliance, we have 3 priorities. Our number 1 priority is conservation education. For instance, I got a call here a couple weeks ago. I'm actually going to do a program here out east here March 1st for a wild game supper. I'm the guest speaker at a church. They usually have around 300 people. And I like doing that. It's fun to teach people that are interested in those things that I'm teaching about. And, it's why I enjoy working here. I never enjoyed teaching about nouns and verbs. There were things I enjoyed teaching about as a school teacher, especially science. And here, I'm pretty much all science. And I can do that through forestry, wildlife, conservation, hunting, fishing, trapping, all of those programs I can teach here. And the people that are my students, they're interested. They're happy to be there. They're interested. And I just love to teach people.
Yeah. So, any new things coming up this year? Anything that you can share? You're allowed to share that you're going to be doing educationally. That you're trying to work something new in or do something to tweak something.
So, I am doing a program with the National Deer Association coming up out east with their Field to Fork. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there you go. So that's something new. I'm going to be out there, and I'm looking forward to that. And then I'm actually going to mentor a hunter as well. I do a lot here with the local nonprofit for youth, Cameron County Outdoor Youth. Also give them a little bit of PR. Wonderful nonprofit for kids. We do a lot of programs together, so that's a growing partnership. And then there are some things that I hate to share with you because if they don't come to fruition,
I'm not gonna force you.
but there are some things that I have in the tank, I guess I would say.
That's called a teaser with you.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll go with that.
I will say one more thing. I'm very proud to say that this year we're able to give out, and here we go. I might as well just share it. When I started here 6 years ago, we started a scholarship fund in partnership with Seneca Resources LLC. We gave one $1,000 scholarship to a high school senior going into some type of conservation field. Maybe it's wildlife, maybe it's forestry, maybe it's education. That grew to 2 scholarships last year. This year it was supposed to be 3. We had 9 applicants this year, and it was so hard for us to decide what 3 we were going to give it to that we had a unanimous donor step up, donate so that we could give scholarships to all of the applicants. They deserve